today's session, Dirt to Soil, the day one session. So, uh, yeah, so actually, there are like 33 participants have got registered for this course, but we have still we are expected to many people may join. So I request the other participants to mute their mics so they can able to hear. Shouldn't be any disturbance. So yeah, so I again welcome all of you. So yeah, this course is being conducted by ISKCON Daiva National Ministry India. So ISKCON IDVM India is basically, I just would like to give a short brief on what is like IDVM India. So IDVM India is a body of the ISKCON. I think most of you might be knowing the ISKCON. ISKCON is like the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and it is a branch of the monotheistic Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, with Hinduism dating back 5,000 years to Lord Krishna himself. So ISKCON was established in the West in 1966 by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and has since developed into a worldwide confederation of over 500 temples, like farm communities, schools, and etc. Like many lakhs of devotees are serving in ISKCON, and yeah, the mission of the ISKCON is like to it is non-sectarian monasteristic movement is to promote the well-being of society by teaching the science of Krishna consciousness according to Bhagavad Gita and other ancient scriptures. So yeah, so basically our ISKCON Daiva National Ministry is basically located in our ISKCON World Headquarters, that is located in Maipur in West Bengal. So the Varnashram, the IDVM, the full form is ISKCON Daiva Varnashram Ministry. So our main objective of our ministry is to encourage within India about the establishment of models of Krishna conscious rural communities, and to demonstrate the principles of self-sufficiency, sustainability, and localized economy, based on proper utilization of land and crop protection. So at the same time, to encourage wherever possible in India, Varnashram-based rural development centered on the land and cows and Krishna. So yeah, so basically, and also we have an Sri Surabhi campaign, which is also under the IDVM India, the ISKCON Daiva National Ministry. So we have got like 12-year marathon actually on the Sri Surabhi campaign, that like from January 1st, 2015, we announced like the marathon goes up to November 2nd, 2027. So we'll be commemorating an unprecedented series of ISKCON Golden Jubilee events centered on our universal mother, the Surabhi cow, the very foundation and backbone of the Vedic culture. So actually our ministry is very clear on to convey that the urgent need, it is an urgent need to give total and absolute care, protection, and maintenance to our mother cow, who supplies all of humanity's necessities of life. So whereas the current situation is like misguided, and that we have forgotten how, by neglecting our mother cow, we are committing the most heinous and unlawful acts that are destined to bring about, without a shadow of doubt, our imminent destruction, actually. So, the like, at present, what we are actually facing, like the COVID-19. So, the cause is like, uh, basically, this is the base. I would say that every act of cruelty to our mother Surabhi and all living entities, I would say, is bringing us closer to a global catastrophe. So there are universal laws of nature that we must respect, failing which we must reap the heavy and dreadful reactions. So this is the situation that we are facing it now. So we must also know for certain that our present legislative policies and decisions supporting the abuse of our universal mother cow, land, and motherland, and not treating all living entities as part of ecosystem, which is a gross deviation from the universal laws of nature, and must bring impending calamities of a most severe nature. So actually, we are crossing the limits of nature's way. So our mission, the Om Shri Surabhi campaign, is to invoke the global auspiciousness to adopt the Surabhi cow as our universal mother aims. Like, yeah, because yeah, she can give all total protection to all forms of life, beginning with our mother Surabhi, who is emblem of peace, prosperity, and all auspiciousness. So by protecting our mother Surabhi, we serve saintly persons, which is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other literatures, that the Brahmanas, by serving the saintly person, the Brahmanas, and by serving saintly person, we protect the entire world. So the Dhatu, it is an inspiration for us to educate on the importance of the, the soil, because the soil is a basis where we can see a number of the life forms which is there, yeah, and how they functions for us, actually. So how the Lord has been created, and this course educate us in that way. So now let us. I don't want to speak a lot more than this now, as of now, because time is running out. So I would like to introduce our speakers mainly for the today's session. Of course, we have multiple speakers, but the exclusively, like, of course, every day, every weeks we have different speakers. Today, the day one speaker is His Grace Madhava Das Prabhu. He is our Deputy Minister for ISKCON Daiva National Ministry, and also Dr. Sri Kumar Prabhu. Dr. Sri Kumar Prabhu is a holistic veterinarian, and also he is our consultant for our ISKCON Daiva National Ministry. And also our Vishnunam Prabhu, he is a co-minister for ISKCON Cow Protection and Agriculture Ministry. Yeah, and myself is Vasudhama Das. I am serving in ISKCON Daiva National Ministry as a national director. Yeah. So let's begin the session. And
can I share my screen?
Yes, Prabhu, you can.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Yutam Tam Sajiva Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahatma Lalita Shiv Shakam Shitamscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasa Rishi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I am here speaking from the northeastern part of the country, and in case there is some disturbance in my speaking, please interrupt. And you're also welcome to interrupt anytime you feel I'm saying something which you're not understanding. If it is not a very elaborate question, if it's something that is going off completely. So we will start today's program of Dirt to Soil. This is our fourth series of fourth seminars on this subject matter. And we're not trying to be too complicated or too technical in this presentation. But at the same time, we would like to actually present soil as something which is which every one of us should know, because on this earth there can be no life without good soil and fertile soil. So normally soil has the properties to sustain life. It is from where life begins on this earth. Soil is not just a place for roots and earthworms, roots to balance themselves, or the plants to balance themselves, or earthworms to live, but it is much more complex. It is a complex process that allows the functioning of all biological activities on this earth. So, as we will see how the present condition of soil that we have is not what it used to be, and the result of the soil not being soil, or rather more or less being seen or being degraded to dirt. What are the consequences of it? This is a verse from the Bhagavad Mahapuran, which is talks about the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, which is about 5,000 plus years ago. Here this is a verse which talks about the land and the soil. Kamam vavarsha parjanya sarva kama dugha sishishu sma vrajangavaha vayudhasvatir muda. Why am I taking this is to understand that certain things that are spoken to us about in the traditional literatures that we have is not really, normally a lot of us think that it's just some kind of fairy tales. But this itself gives us an indication of how the land used to be. Please see here, they said here, Sarva Kama Dugha Mahi, Kamam Bavarsha Parjani. When the rains come, it is the earth that fulfills all the desires of all the living entities on this earth. Sarva Kama Dugha Mahi. And one of the primary things that happens when the earth is full, or the earth is properly functioning, is Shishisma Brajan Gav Ayudhasvatir Muda. The cow is in a very cheerful attitude and is full of milk. It is so much milk that it actually moistens the ground with her milk. That means so much excess milk is there. Now, this may sound a little funny, because can such a thing happen, especially in India, where we see starving cows, or cows lazing or eating in dustbins. Now, why does a cow have that cheerful attitude? Is because the mountains, the hills, the oceans, the rivers are all active, and they are all full of nutrients. And when such a thing happens, then nadhyo vyadhya klesha daiva bhutatma hetavah ajata shatrava bhavan jantunam ragnya karhichit. When the soil is full and is properly functioning, then there are very few disturbances like mental agonies, diseases, or even excessive heat, cold. Now, as we will proceed with this seminar, you will actually see how even the excessive heat that we are talking about today, or the excessive cold that we're talking about today, is a result of the malfunctioning of the earth and the soil. And that also includes mental agonies and diseases. Now, some people say that this all could be just, mythological talk, or just kind of a hyperbole, uh, something excessively glorified. No, you will see that this was repeated about another two millenniums later, that is around the 4th century BC, by Plato, in which is talks about Greek the Greek period at that time. He says about what was the situation of Greece at that time. What now remains of formerly rich land is the skeleton of a sick man, with all the fat and the soft earth having wasted away, and the only bare framework remaining. So this is what has happened even in Greece. The fat and soft earth that goes away is actually the rich soil that flows out of the earth. And then what remains is only a bare framework, which is barely able to function. Formerly, many of the mountains were arable. The plains that were full of rich soil are now marshes. This is even seen in countries where there wasn't any inhabitation, no human inhabitation or no human agriculture going on. Places like Mauritius and other places like that, where when they started farming, they were actually even farming on the mountaintops of. And even today, if you go to Mauritius, you'll see certain areas, because it's only been about a few decades that there has been agriculture going on in Mauritius. So you will see that they're even growing sugarcane on top of mountains. Now, even the plains have turned to marshes, places where there's waterlogging, or it's not cultivable anymore because the soil is gone. Hills that were once covered with forest and produced abundant pasture now only produce food for bees. It's barely able to sustain only bees. We are not able to sustain. Is there someone needs to be muted? Okay. Once the land was enriched by yearly rains, which were not lost. Now, rains that we have in the cities, when we get rains, it only fills up the drains. But previously, when there used to be rains, we would get grains. Annat bhavanti bhutani parajanyat anna sambhavaha. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says. But today in the cities, we don't like rains because this simply fills up the drains, and we don't like the mucky situation there. But it is not to be like that, because actually rains produce grains. Why? Because it is not lost. And why? How is it lost? It is lost when the soil is bare. It is not able to actually take the rain. The rain and soil are connected. They help each other. It is a rich soil that gives rise to rains, and it is the rich soil that gives rise to plants, and in turn, the cycle goes on. We will have a nice session on that. The soil was deep; it absorbed and kept water in loamy soil, and the water that soaked into the hills fed springs and running streams everywhere. This is a major problem today, as this is not functioning anymore. The soil is no longer functioning and absorbing the water. What we are having is a situation of drought, and not just drought. We are moving towards a situation where most part of the earth will become arid. We will see this as we go forward, even in this session. And Plato, at the end says, now the abandoned shrine with spots where formerly there were springs attest to our description of the land is true. We can even see this today in places where there used to be springs and there used to be some shrines to actually worship the places where water would come out. They are now all abandoned. So, soil is the basis of water. It is the basis of life. It is the basis of healthy life. It is the basis of peaceful and peaceful in the sense that there are no mental agonies, diseases, excessive heat and cold, because the earth is functioning properly. When the earth stops functioning properly, then we have all these as we have today. So all our needs, our food, our energy, water, shelter, clothing, transport, are ultimately derived from plants. The functioning of the earth starts with the plants, and a wide variety of plants, a whole lot of varieties, because we don't only need food, we need fibers, we need timber, we need fuel, we need oils, we need colors, we need sweets, we need spices, condiments, so many things that we need to survive in our life, including medicines, the earth. And all of this takes place when plants capture the solar energy, and plants cannot grow without their soil. And unfortunately, even though it is a common sense to know that without plants and soil, there can be no civilization, we have moved on to become a civilization that absolutely has no regard for either the soil or the plants. To some degree, some people do show some sympathy for plants and talk about planting trees and making things green, but you can't do it if there is no healthy soil. If there are no healthy soils, you cannot protect even cows. Why are cows not being protected is because the soil is neglected. And with a poor soil, when it is functioning poorly, anyone surviving on top of it, on it, based on it, also their situation becomes miserable and pitiable. And when the soil is not functioning properly, the plants are not functioning properly, and our situation becomes miserable and pitiable, we cannot make up for it with our apartments, our computers, money in the bank, or even the kind of music that we're listening to in iPods or on our mobile phones. All of that is going to be of no use to us. And we just saw what one pandemic has done to the world. Okay. So to recognize that a soil can be healthy, one has to think of the soil as almost as a living entity. Why I'm saying this? Because it's only if the soil is healthy, it breathes. We will explain to you how breathing takes place in the soil gradually. But the soil, which is compacted, which is not breathing, whether it is on your in a tub, or it is on a terrace, or it is on the land, if it stops breathing, it starts sickening. And then all the cycles of life stop. The water cycle stops. The nutrient cycling stops. The soil not just is a place where we walk on. Today, people don't like soil. They want to cover it up with cement because no one wants to see such muck around. We made a civilization of such types. And as a result of that, we are not seeing transformation of nutrients, cycling of nutrients, transportation of nutrients from one place to another place, which all takes place with the soil. If that form of dynamics is stopped, then our civilization on this earth will stop, which is where we are coming to today. It interacts with the environment. It is not simply lifeless stuff which is simply there, on which we can do whatever kind of nonsense we want to do on it, and it'll just remain like that. No, it interacts with the environment. It reacts to what is going on around. It can even purify itself, and it can grow. Soil can grow. There is hardly anything that we can actually grow. Most of the things that we use, whether it is petroleum, whether it is cement, whether it is stones to build our houses, all of these have limited capacity. They are finite. Once they are finished, we cannot get them back. But the soil is something that we can always grow. We can bring them back. So as soon as we neglect the soil, and without understanding the dynamics that the soil has, then we will sicken the soil. And as the soil sickens, the world sickens. Let me now show you how the sickening takes place. As the soil, this is for an agricultural diagram taken from agriculture and agricultural activities. You can also see it from the whole world. Intensive tillage or intensive disturbance to the soil breaks down the aggregate of the soil. We will explain to you in the next few verses how, next slides. This is what an aggregate of soil means. Soil, the basic backbone of the soil are the weathered material of different things like stones, minerals, silt, of different types, of different varieties, of different texture, of different quality. Like, for example, the clay quality is from basalt rock, which comes down and becomes very fine. Silicon particles, when they become small, break down, that's where you get sand particles from. Similarly, different others. Now, when the picture on your right-hand side, that is the runoff, which is on top of it is written runoff. is a situation where the soil is compacted because of constant disturbance to the soil. The soil is now becoming tightly packed up. There is no space in between the particles of the soil. The space between them is now packed up. They just closely packed up. Now, the difference is in a healthy soil, we have what is called organic matter in the soil. And this organic matter actually creates the spaces, takes up the spaces in between the soil particles. And as the spaces between the soil particles are actually filled up with organic matter, that is broken down particles of from dead and decaying plant materials and animal materials, when these spaces are taken away by the disturbances that we cause to it, the soil becomes hard. It becomes compacted. It doesn't have. You can think about the packaging that is given to a crate of apples. In between, they put, or mangoes, they put different kinds of things so that it doesn't pack up very closely. So the space or that material that is given for packaging, you can understand that to be like the organic matter. So as the organic matter is actually removed, like here we see, then what happens is the aggregates break down. The spaces within the soil break down and they become very closely compacted. When the surface becomes compacted and a crust starts forming on it, the organic matter decreases. As it decreases, there is less of water infiltrating into the soil, and there is more water running off the soil. And this runoff water, which is actually supposed to go into the soil, further runs down and causes floods. Organic matter, as it decreases further down, this is how it's spiraling down and down and down. As it further decreases, it decreases water storage. There is less diversity of the soil. Fewer organisms can actually be supported because organisms, whether it is plants, microbes, animals, nematodes, or different forms of animals, they all survive on the organic matter that is there in the soil, as we see here. So this is this is also the spaces by which they can move up and down. And also what happens is when this compaction takes place, there is less air in the soil. As there is less air in the soil, the organisms will also stop staying there. There's less organisms staying in that soil. And as this compaction takes place and we are trying to plow it and put some crops into it, the crop yield reduces. And not just the crop yield reduces, they are plagued with diseases because there is not enough life in the soil. There's not enough nutrients in the soil. There's not enough nutrients being cycled in the soil. And as the crop yield, the crops become poor, and you have to start spraying a lot of pesticides and a lot of insecticides and a lot of other things, fungicides, etc., because these poor crops, impoverished crops, are not able to actually fight the situation. So therefore, and those of us who live off such yields of crops which are not healthy, we are also under malnutrition. We will see more about it. I'm just giving you, this is only an introduction. We will see in the future sessions how malnutrition is actually universal, or rather on the whole world. It is currently going on without us realizing. It is all coming from a degraded soil. Okay, yeah. So now this is the result of what has happened to us all over. In the last 70 years, about 40% of the arable land is the land which was cultivable land, has been abandoned. And we are opening newer and newer land and intensifying the agriculture. We're putting more energy into agriculture. We put more intensively. We're trying to do agriculture because the soil is becoming degraded. As the soil is compacting, please remember this picture. This soil is slowly compacting. It is becoming hard. It is not allowing water to go in. It is not allowing nutrients to penetrate. It is not allowing air to go inside. It is not allowing plants to root itself because of this compaction that is there, because of the constant disturbance we're doing to the soil and the way we're treating the soil. And as a result of this, as the soil is degrading, this is how it is degrading. We are losing in India about 10 to 15 tons of soil for every ton of food that we are producing. Imagine if we were to spend 15 rupees or 10 rupees or 10 to 15 rupees for every rupee that we want to earn, do you think we will ever be rich? If we want to earn 1 rupee, we spend 15 rupees. Is this a viable solution? No. And you can see this everywhere. All the dams that we have built in modern India after independence are all full with silt. All the rivers are full with silt because it's all coming from all the surrounding areas, not just only the farms. It is coming from the cities, it's coming from the forests, it's coming from the hills, because it's coming from the roads. All that disturbances that we're doing is filling up all our dams. Most of the dams are already more than 50% full. And full with what? It is full with soil. And further, it goes down into the sea. And as a result of all this that is going on, we are degrading our growing lands further and further. And that is the reason even trees are not able to grow on hillsides. And mind you, even to produce organic food, we need at least 20 tons of compost per acre, 20 to 30 tons of compost per acre. And forget about putting 20 tons of compost per acre. We are losing 10 to 15 tons of soil every year. In fact, the Food and Agriculture Organization, which is a part of the UN, in 2015 observed a day for the soil, and they published a report in which they showed that if we are going to lose soil like this, then we will only have another, that is in 2015, so -5. So we only have about 55 more harvests left with the current kind of soil. Now, coming back to this again, this is how the soil is losing out. Previously, the water would actually penetrate into an aggregated soil and go down. Now, because of the compaction that is taking place, because of the disturbances, the tillage, the disturbances we are doing to the soil, which is burning up or not allowing the organic matter to actually remain within the soil particles and create the pores in the soil, as a result of which what happens is that the soil is compacted and the water actually doesn't penetrate, but rather runs off. As it runs off, it also takes with it the soil that is on top. Erosion of topsoil on farms deprive fields of most fertile portion. When erosion takes place, not just of farms and hills everywhere, it takes the most fertile part of the soil. Now, why is it the most fertile part? Because it is a part where most of the recycling takes place, most of the nutrients get recycled, where the air is there, where water is there, the moisture is there, and it contains the highest percentage of organic matter and nutrients. So this is what happens when rainfall falls on water, on soil. It can dislodge soil particles to move as far as 6 feet away. And once it is loose like that and water is flowing on top, it is going to be carried away by the water. And therefore, you would see during the rainy season, all our rivers are all brown. Why? Because it's all carrying all the soil from the hills, from the roads, from the cities, from the fields, everywhere. It is all being carried away to the rivers. And any above ground soil cover can, anything that is on the top can prevent that punch that we are talking about, this punch of 6 feet, the water that falls onto it. So I think there is someone used to be.
Hare Krishna, Subramaniam Prabhu, please mute.
Okay.
Yes.
So now the slow action of moving water needs to move slowly, and then it reduces its soil carrying capacity. And by creating different obstacles in its course of travel with leaves, stems, roots, etc., the water must maneuver on its way downhill as it goes down. No land is perfectly level. There's always land that is sloping towards some degree, somewhere it slopes. So this increases the soil's absorption capacity, though it is, and it improves its pore structure, prevents large quantities of water from moving across the surface of the land, and therefore reduces the amount of soil carrying capacity. It will carry some amount, that is okay. But if we carry the way it is being carried, it is carrying far more than what we can actually recover in the course of. So because of the soils degrading in this manner, what is happening is we are moving to, the soil is not producing sufficient food, and therefore we are moving to shallow areas, to actually marginal lands like hillsides, into arid areas, into very fragile climates like, forested areas, which should not actually be cultivated. But we are moving to those areas for cultivation because we are not taking care of the soil. And because we are moving on to forests, etc., we're losing the diversity, the variety of crops that we need, the variety of forests that we need to actually sustain life on the earth. Life on the earth, we will see this further as we go ahead. But today's project, what we're trying to impress upon you, making you try to understand, is that the soil needs organic material, dead, decaying materials back in the soil. It needs to have that. We have a tendency today to actually make sure that the soil has nothing at all except the plants that we want to grow. No, if the soil, and we think that we just can take care of all the nutrient requirements that are there of the plant simply by throwing some fertilizer on top of it, doing some top dressing. No, this is not possible, because the soil not just requires nutrients, it also requires air. It requires water to penetrate into it. It requires the pores. It requires the soft structure for the roots to move out. All this is not happening today because the way we are thinking about the soil. And this is an amazing thing, that India has the maximum amount of cultivable land in the world. We have more land to cultivate than the United States, Russia, the China. But what are we doing with it? Are we thinking about it? No. We are not even understanding that we have much more soil to cultivate than any other part of, and more than that, we have more soil to cultivate. At the same time, we have more sunshine than any of these countries have to cultivate our land. And not just that, we are we have an average of more than 1,100 millimeters of rainfall on an average in this country. So we have sufficient water, we have sufficient uh, sunlight, we have sufficient warm climate, sufficient sunny days, warm climate to cultivate, yet we are struggling. Okay, but all this can be changed if we take care to understand uh, about the soil. And as we understand, you see, we are very good in protecting the boundaries of our land. We are all fighting. There is a lot of fighting going on. 80% of the cases, the legal cases in India, are people fighting over the boundaries of the land. And the different countries are fighting with one another about their boundaries of the land. We are very careful about the length and the breadth of the country. But there is also a third dimension to this, to the land. It is the topsoil, the top part of it, which we are neglecting. We are busy protecting the length and the breadth, but we are forgetting the height of the soil. Now, this soil is something that we can, if we prevent, we take care, we can make it more and more rich. It is renewable. And how is it that we're going to change this whole thing that is happening to the world around? By organic matter. And organic matter is something that all soils will give us as we take care of the soil. Organic matter can improve the conditions of our soil, and not just the conditions of our soil, it can improve the conditions of our lives, the people who are living in it, the conditions of disease, the conditions of mental illness, the conditions of heat, the climate change that we are having problems with, all by simply increasing. And why organic matter? Because first and foremost, it's a very simple thing. All organic matter is basically carbon-based. And currently we are talking about carbon content, which is actually going up into the sky in terms of burning fuel, fossil fuels, etc. And we are trying out so many techniques, technological techniques, to bring that carbon back into the soil, back into the earth, which should not be there. And it's only a very small fraction of the total atmospheric air that is there. But it can very easily be brought back if it can come back in the form of organic matter. Okay, and organic matter can create massive changes in any piece of land that you have. That is, if you can increase organic matter in your soil by even 1%, this is, of course, depending on the kind of soil that is there, because sandy soil, to increase 1% of organic matter, to come to an organic 1% organic matter in sandy soil is a very big achievement. You will get tremendous changes as soon as you do that. In sandy and loamy soils, 2 to 3% organic matter is a lot. Whereas in clay soils, 4 to 5% is something which is desirable because of the aeration in different kinds of the soil structure, etc. And because of the aeration in sandy soils, the organic matter will get decomposed much faster. So organic matter, when we increase organic matter, what happens is, in very simple terms, increases water infiltration. Organic matter in the soil, when you start increasing organic matter in the soil, it increases the water holding capacity of your soil. It'll make our soils drought proof. Why? Because it can hold 100 times its own weight, the amount of water. It can hold whatever amount of organic matter is there in the soil. It can take 100 times its own capacity, and it will hold that much capacity of water in the soil. It is also becomes a very it has a very good exchange capacity. So therefore, nutrients will be very easily exchanged in that situation. It's a cation, the positive ion are there, so therefore it attracts the negative ions, and it can exchange nutrients very easily here. And it is the long-term storage. It's not that we store organic matters. It's the long-term storage of nutrients in the soil. And it increases the variety of nutrients. When we don't have organic matter, only we have some synthetic fertilizers that we are throwing on our soil, we only give a few that the factory can provide. But when we put organic matter into the soil, it gives so many varieties from different kinds of decay and different stages of decay of different materials that are there, like roots, leaves, whatever we have. Now, organic matter again has two basic fractions to say. Not all organic matter are the same. There is the short-term organic matter, which we call as the active fraction, which are basically the succulent or the rich, soft proteins, plants that are there. They are soft and succulent. They are picked up early, just like we like sweets. Sweets are picked up very early by everyone. Similarly, sweets and soft things are very easily picked up by the microbes, etc., of the organic matter very early. And these are basically simple sugars, fresh residues, the microbial cells, the proteins that release nitrogen, nitrogenous waste, things that are degradation as it decomposes. Then it gives potassium, it gives phosphorus and other nutrients. It releases very fast, and they are very actively taken up by microbes and all the plants that are there. This is all fresh materials that is available, and it burns up very fast, doesn't leave much for building the organic matter. Comes mainly from legumes and animals. So this is also desirable because this is what actually is the current account on which life is running. Life runs on this account, but we also need another fraction, which is the stable fraction of organic matter, which comes from the woodier and more fibrous materials. This is constitutes of cellulose and lignins. These are the building materials, the hard building materials in your plant and plant materials. Because you see, no other, we all depend on what the plants produce. All of us are actually heterotrophs. The only organisms that are autotrophs that make their own food are plants. So amongst the plants, there are different varieties. Of those, the woodier and the more fibrous ones are the ones which will create the most stable fraction of the organic matter, which is stable fraction means that which will survive for longer period, slowly decompose, slowly release nutrients. And they basically come from grains, non-legumes, perennial legumes, not the annual legumes. Annual legumes do not give us the stable fraction, it gives us the active fraction. And it is what gives the soil its dark, rich, and spongy feeling. This is the soil that is good aggregate. Aggregate because it has got the organic matter in the soil. It has the stickiness to keep the soil together. There are different forms of aggregates. They're basically aggregates are formed with polysaccharides or multiple sugars that are there, complex sugars that form it, and glue particles of soil and other things around it. But these are basically more of the active fraction. But the one which is created, the stickiness that is created in the soil by the fungus or the mycorrhiza that is there in the soil, fungus that is growing in the soil to break down the organic matter and is actually eating up the dead and decaying organic matter. That fungus forms something called gomelin, which is given to us by in 1998. This was very nicely studied by Wright and Upadhyay, and we have a very nice paper on that. And anyone of you all want to check it out, you can check out Wright, WRIGHT, and Upadhyay in 1998 made a very nice publication on that. So study of that. So now, this is how we evaluate our soil. We normally talk about the soil typically of its physical characteristics. It is loamy, sandy soil, this, that, its color, its texture, its chemical, what kind of chemistry it has got. But most of us forget that one of the most important factors that maintain soil health or soil health is connected to is the biological factor. That is why we are saying here all parameters are important, definitely physical, chemical, but we neglect typically the biological part of it. And biology is the king. When that is gone, the whole system becomes ruined. Now, this is how uh, the organic matter actually helps us to um, take care of the soil. How, what happens when we grow crops? We grow something, there are a lot of residues that are there in the soil. Basically, the residues from the crops that are there, the parts that you don't use, like for the example, we're growing peanuts, the nuts is what we use, the covers, the plant, the trunk, the fibrous root system, all of that comprises of organic matter for us. As this is something that needs to be back in the soil. This is not to be removed from the soil. And if it is there in the soil, then what happens is that this is how the cycle takes place. Let's just go one cycle at a time. We'll take the cycle of the increased biological activity. And with this biological activity, it goes down here. Then as it decomposes, through the process of decomposition, whatever harmful materials may be there in the soil, they're all taken care of because it's broken down, and then gives rise to healthy soils and finally goes back to creating healthy plants. As the decomposition takes place, what happens is that the soil aggregation increases. As the aggregation of the soil increases, there's better improved structure in the soil, and therefore there's more water in the soil. So the water goes deeper into the soil, and it is held there for much longer period. In fact, it can even be there throughout the year. It reduces temperature in the soil. And another factor that we see here is that it releases nutrients as the process of decomposition takes place, and it is available for the plants as active nutrients, even as long-term, and it has humus, which is growth promoting substances that will actually be connected with the aeration, the availability of water, the availability of micronutrients that will actually help to stay in that soil, which has got good aggregation. And it also reduces different kinds of diseases because they create a diversity of different food webs which eat each other up. So the parasitic nematodes or eggs or things like that are laid by different animals or microorganisms there, they're eaten up by the others. So therefore, this whole complexity actually helps to reduce an amount of diseases or parasites or things that will affect our food growing plants. So these are basically the 7 attributes or that is required in a healthy soil. Okay, so number 1 is that the soil should have sufficient supply of nutrients throughout the growing season. This is not possible by throwing some fertilizer on the top. I repeat, simply by throwing fertilizer on the top every 15 days or so, you are not supplying nutrients to it. That is why the requirement of fertilizer keeps on increasing. Synthetic fertilizers keep on increasing if you start using fertilizers once. And you're not supplying it sufficient organic matter in the soils. So, whereas soil that has got sufficient organic matter is degrading, decomposing, and as its decomposition is taking place, that is continuously supplying nutrients to the plants. And throughout the growing season, it's not that it needs only once in 15 days. It needs every day. Then only the good growth is taking place. If you starve a person for 3 days and then feed him every 3 days, what happens to him? Do you think he's going to have a good life? No. He needs regular food at regular intervals, water, food, whatever is required should be provided to him at regular timings, not that you starve him, then again feed him. So this is why we have diseases. This is why a person becomes diseased. And this is why our plants become diseased. Structure of the soil. This has got what we call as good tilt. Tilt means the soft feeling of the soil. So, so that the roots can actually develop further, can go down deeper into the soil. And if the soil is compacted, as we saw before, that's the roots cannot penetrate deep into the soil. And therefore, water cannot go deep into the soil, the roots cannot penetrate deep into the soil, and the roots spread on the top itself. And as a result of this, again, the plants suffer. And when plants suffer, and we live off that suffering plant, we also suffer. Depths. This is again, which we've already said. The group drainage, water should also not just always only be there flooding. Most crops, except for maybe Canberry and paddy, most crops do not need so much water to be there. It has to be well-drained soil. It has to have aeration. The air should be functioning in the roots so that the roots are able to go out much deeper and much wider. And not just roots, they also need, as we will see in the future, that there is also a lot of symbiotic relationships with the roots, with fungus and other bacterial elements and actinomycetes, etc., which actually help the roots to actually to get its nutrients and water from the surrounding areas, and can spread much more further than that. Without good drainage and aeration, this oxygen cannot actually leave the oxygen cannot penetrate into the depth of the soil, as a result of which the roots will actually not go down long enough. And also the carbon dioxide that is released from it, it has to come out. So if it is not, then it again dies. So the roots will die out and your plants are going to suffer. So with this whole thing happening, this is what is called as a desirable qualities of a healthy soil. And it should also have a diversity of different plants and animals and microbes, so that one can take care of the other. So they are all taken care, the beneficial ones and the, in fact, there is nothing which is not beneficial. When it does not have something that it needs to have, it starts attacking our plants. So there is a very carefully organized balancing system in nature, in God's creation, in which there is something that eats the other. Jiva jiva, jivasa jivanam. So one eats the other, one eats the other. So that takes care, controls your, whatever we call it, we sometimes call them weeds or undesirable plants or undesirable animals or microbes that infect our plants. This is all because we have destroyed the diversity that is there, which will actually take care of all of them, because they are actually going to take care of us. But we are forgetting that they also have a role to play in the nature, in our actually providing us a healthy life. Because we are not understanding that, we are thinking that they are actually something which is going to affect us or give us a problem. That is because we have removed what is required. We have removed the diversity that is required to survive on this planet. And nature, you will see in nature, nothing grows on its own. Only monocropping is never there on Earth. Monocropping is a folly. It's a mistake that we are doing. And when we start growing only one kind of crop around, we will see that diseases keep increasing, and we have to use more and more chemicals to disease. And of course, to take care of the toxins that may be harmful, that could be, even could be parasite or even microorganisms which are difficult for us, or even heavy metals or any other such things can be taken care of if there is sufficient organic matter in the soil. All these things are being taken care of because the organic matter is on which all these different kinds of living entities survive. So they are all being active. They take care of all these things. There are microbes and there are other animals which take care of even the aluminium and acidic soils, and they reduce the excess salts in the soil if there is sufficient organic matter and the soil is actually working, because active soil will take care of all these things. So this is what is desirable in a healthy soil, and it has got resilience. It should resist being degraded, and it should also be able to take care of any form of variation in the climate, like, for example, excess rainfall or less rainfall. All of that should be taken care of by the soil. So this is a healthy soil. Now, this is how the crop residues are taking place. This cycle has to be maintained. If the cycle is not maintained and the residues are not coming back to the soil and there's not enough organic matter in the soil, we have a sick soil. This is, of course, how the carbon dioxide is being going around. But when you do not have organic matter in the soil, it gets oxidized and goes up into the air. It is only a 0.04% of the atmosphere, but a little increase of it causes such havoc as we are seeing today. Climate change, we're having international meetings. Why? Because we have created enough bare soil so that there is not anymore. The same thing is about nitrogen. 78%, whether it is only 0.04% of carbon dioxide or it is nitrogen, we have a problem with not enough nitrogen in the soil. Why? Because we don't have enough organic matter, because nitrogen cannot survive on the soil on its own. It is highly volatile. It has to go up back into the atmosphere. So what will keep it in the soil is the living entities, the living bacteria, the living organic matter. It gets bound to the organic carbon and therefore remains in the soil. It remains in living plants. It remains in a lot of nitrogen is actually supplied to our soils by animals. But because we put so much pesticide and so many other chemicals into it, and then we keep on troubling them, we keep digging it up, we keep on disking it, etc. What happens to all of them is that the living entities cannot live there. And as soon as we start disturbing the soil in that manner, it heats up. It starts compacting. One of the things why we do plowing of the soil is that we want to make it loose so that we can plant our seeds and the roots can go. But we can't go deep enough. As we try to go deep enough, what happens? We may go even 2 or 3 feet into it, but what happens is that we actually break up all the organic matter. We expose them to the sunshine, we expose them to the heat, we expose them to the air. And as we expose them more to the heat, the air, etc., the more oxidation takes place. The more it oxidizes and goes back into its gaseous form. So, and coming back to nitrogen again. So we have the government currently, in every government currently, is spending more than crores and crores and crores of rupees to make fertilizers, nitrogenous fertilizers, and give it to the farmers. Why? Because there's not enough nitrogen in the soil. Now this is a huge thing. So some people say, no, we should plant nitrogen fixing plants in the soil, which will give us nitrogen. No, but even to fix nitrogen in the soil using leguminous plants, the soil has to have the following things. And this is why a huge amount of our money is being wasted. Because to fix nitrogen in the soil through biological systems, it requires molybdenum, it requires iron, it requires potassium, it requires sulfur, it requires zinc to properly function. So even though you are supplying synthetic nitrogenous materials, what about the others? And if there's not enough in the soil and throughout the growing season, nitrogen is not going to be fixed. And even legumes, they can rarely fix more than only about 80% of the nitrogen in an ideal condition can only fix 90. Usually only fixes about 40 to 50%. So again, when we are putting a lot of nitrogenous synthetic fertilizers in the soil, what happens is that the legumes do not actually fix nitrogen on its own. They just simply take whatever is there. But the main thing that we need to, what I'm trying to come to, is that nitrogen is basically fixed by bacteria in the soil. And this fixing of nitrogen in the soil by bacteria can only take place if there is organic matter in the soil. And bacteria can live off it. If it is not, if there is no life in soil, then where is the bacteria going to live on? We are trying nowadays to give farmers bacteria when they're growing their crops. But again, how long are you going to keep buying bacteria and providing it? It is naturally going to be there if you can provide organic material to the soil. And it becomes naturally available when plants decompose. Okay, so this is the story of organic material. Root exudates, plant residues, manures, compost give us organic material, and then we lose them in the form of respiration through soil organisms. We lose them through erosion, and we saw how much we're losing through erosion. 10 to 15 tons of soil is being eroded for every ton of food that we are producing. So so if we want growth, everyone loves growth, birth and growth, but if you do not balance it with death and decay, growth will not take place. All of us love growth, but what about the death and the decay? If we don't take care of the death, the dying, and the decaying, even in life, even in human society, if we don't take care of the old people, people who are in need, we cannot have growth in the society. A society is not going to be safe. No one's going to. So as we neglect the old people, you will see the growth rates will actually go down. In all the countries where families are neglected, the old people are neglected, the population is going to crash. Similarly, here also is what is going to happen. Is as soon as we stop taking care of the old people, the younger people will also stop growing, because there is no environment for growth. For everything, there is a requirement from the other, the death and the decay. Okay. So to build healthy soils, these are things that we need to keep in mind, is to implement these practices of increasing adding organic matter to the soil. Add not just one variety of organic matter, there's many different varieties of organic matter in the soil. Minimize the loss of native soil materials. The basic materials have to be actually protected, because they form the very basis of a lot of minerals that are actually produced or needed for plant growth. Cover the soil. If we don't cover soil, this is, of course, it is, but more important than that, everyone knows that we need to cover the soil, but one of the most important reasons is that it reduces the temperatures in the soil. When the temperatures go above 31, 35 degrees in the soil, there is no activity in the soil. Just like when the temperatures in your city goes up above 35, how many people actually you can see around doing activities in that hot temperature? You can't. Just like we can't work in hot temperature, plants also can't work in hot temperature or in very low temperatures. And both the temperature extremes are actually protected by organic matter in the soil. When there's sufficient organic matter, dead decaying matter produces heat. It produces hot temperatures, which allows the soil to actually keep functioning. And when it is covered in hot temperatures there, the soil temperatures are kept 20 to 30 degrees below that by the organic matter. So this is an important aspect that we need to keep remembering. Minimize tillage and other kind of disturbances on the soil. Even when we are traveling, moving around, the soil compacted, soil when you start compacting, as people think that plowing actually loosens the soil, but what it does, it loosens it and takes it away and creates a layer of more finer particles that settle down and create a compacting layer, a crust. Because there is no, and it removes the organic matter in the soil. So all these things, it also helps to maintain the pH levels in the soil. So we have to maintain pH levels in the soil. This is what good soil requires, and all of it requires organic matter. It also reduces the amount of salts in the soil because it allows the aeration to take place, the respiration to take place, and also allows the retention and the binding of the salts in the soil. There's one question that commonly comes to us all the time is about hydroponics, or people growing. Can we grow plants without organic matter, or can we grow, in fact, without any soil? Well, you can even grow even without anything. We can grow it on gravel. You can grow very nice kind of crops without all of these. We are seeing in hydroponics is showing us. But what we are seeing is that in such situations, the micronutrients or the trace elements are not always good and available naturally. And it is also seen that it is not economically or ecologically viable in the long term. This is something that I would like to remind you, coming down to those who are from India, since we have most of our audience is from India. I'm sure it must be the same in different parts of the world. I know that it is in some other countries. This is what is the situation. This is something which I found in a magazine some time back, in which it said this is what India is going to face in next 30 years, or even less than 30 years. Yeah, is that most of our states in India, nearly half of the country, will routinely reel under drought by 2050 and eventually turn barren. This is what climate change scientists have been telling us. And this is going to affect most of central India, and which are today even, some are even probably very green. And as this happens, the GDP of these states will go down by 9%, which is probably 7 to 9 major states in India. The most populous states of India is going to have this situation. And this is when water runs out, when we start having problems with water, drought and famines will start. Then where will people go? It will ruin factories. It will ruin, even to run factories, you need water. And if you don't have water, if you don't have good food, you're going to have diseases. People are going to go away from places. And come to think about it, it's not very far away. And 9% GDP is a huge percentage. If 9% on average goes down, this is about 20,000 lakh crores of money per year, 9% of the GDP, around that much. So now, how do we rectify the situation? We're coming down to what we are trying to actually present to you in the upcoming seminars that we are going to have. As humans, what can we do to it? Well, we humans are the only species, not the only species, but the major thing that we do as humans is that we are tool-using species. And whenever we have a problem, we want to fix it either with technology or with fire, mainly with these two things. How do you say what we mean by technology? We want to get some technology to do more farming by plowing deeper, by getting water, by doing so many things. We use technology to do it. Okay, but technology has its limitation, because life is not technology, it's biology. So Technology, we have been making rapid advancement in technology, but is it solving the problems of our world today? No. We will see a lot of that in the coming thing. We try to use fire. In fact, everything that we're making around, including the computers that we have, the mobile phones that we have, so many things that we have around is almost all of it is made with fire. The rest is another thing that we have realized that we can use to actually rectify the soil and different things. Even a person who's sick, what do we suggest to him? Take rest. Don't go to office. Don't go to school. Don't go to office. Don't go to college. Resting is another way that we try to rectify things. If there is a place is very disturbed, we want to create sanctuaries which is not disturbed. But one thing that we have not realized is that we can also use living organisms to actually rectify. And that is what we will see. And one of the living organisms that we are not seeing as a very important tool in rectifying the situation that we have, especially soil, is that of ruminant animals, especially cows, which we can very easily organize. And cows can actually save our soils and save our lives. This is what you will see as the thing will go. Now, this is the last part of it that we make. So the world around that we have historically, this has started in a few years, I mean, a few decades ago, maybe about 150 years ago, when we started seeing things differently. We started seeing the world as parts, like a machine that is made of different parts. So if you isolate different parts, like for example, the soil, we say, okay, what is your nutrient content of your soil? We'll just check the nutrients of your soil and give you the right kind of nutrients in the soil. Does that solve the problem? No, that is a reductionistic attitude of looking into the soil. Because nothing is disconnected in the world. Everything is connected. And because we are trying to manage things in a reductionistic way, by breaking it into parts and manage only the nitrogen in the soil, only the phosphorus in the soil, only the potassium in the soil, we're trying to only give it that. What is happening is that we are not realizing that it requires a much more holistic treatment. Everything is connected. When you start giving carbon to the soil, then it automatically brings, the organic matter brings in the other things to the soil. But no, we're only trying to provide nitrogen. This is a reductionist attitude in every aspect of life, even for human health. If you're only trying to cure a liver of a person without trying to cure his habits, without trying to understand him as a person, why is his liver getting affected? You are only trying to be a reductionistic view of trying to deal with the problem. So this is going to cause problems. And what we are trying to say here is that as humans, we need to take care of decisions in a much different way. Life is very complex. We tend to take a problem and solve only one part of the problem, but the problem has multiple effects. We take decisions which will have consequences in everywhere else in different ways. So there are linkages to all our problems. As soon as you think that we can just put some nitrogen in the soil and we'll get good growth, it hasn't solved the problem today. So that is one of the reasons that what we are saying is that we need a more holistic approach to soil and health. And one of the reasons, the whole problem, we are talking about economics today, we are talking about social problems, we are talking about people fighting, communities fighting with one another, people fighting with one another, countries fighting with one another. All this is because we have lost the connections that is naturally there in the soil. Naturally, our soil, our lives, our communities, our families, our diseases, our economies are all interconnected. And if we do not approach it in this holistic manner, we will not solve any problems, rather we'll be creating more problems. So with this, I will end today's program. I hope you all will understand that this is going to be a different kind of an attitude. It's not going to tell you you put this and your plant will survive, or this is going to do things. No, it's going to be much more different than that. It's going to be a lot of connections, interconnections between each one of the aspects of that we have. And as you go towards this whole system, you will see how they are all connected. Thank you very much. I will hand this over back to Vasudhama to make the
Thank you.
concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much for your wonderful session, actually. And now I would like to request the participants, those who have any doubts, they can raise their hands and they can ask the questions to the speaker. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Yeah. Rageshwari Mataji, yes, please, you can ask the question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Actually, when Prabhuji was telling about flowing, we couldn't hear it clearly. As in, is it good, or plowing too deep? Is it bad, or what is the practice?
As we plow the land, um, it actually exposes the organic material that is there in the soil to the sun. And if you notice, what is the temperature in a hot, sunny day on the soil? It is about 60 to 70 degrees temperature. So plowing used to be done before, even in traditional agriculture, but they were not using iron plows. The plows that we traditionally used, the plow that Balaram carries, we know Balaram carries a plow, it was actually a wooden plow. And these plows are not deep plowing activities. It is only meant for seeding the plants, and just a superficial thing, just to give enough disturbance to, make enough cut in the ground to actually put seeds. But we have, over the years, have created systems by which we have been plowing and plowing and plowing. Today, we are going as deep as possible. As a result of this, the earth, the soil becomes exposed to the hot sun. It becomes exposed to aeration, and all the organic matter is actually becoming, degrading very fast and going back into its gaseous forms. So we are actually losing out organic matter. And when the soil, why do we plow? Basically, to loosen the soil, to put seeds in, right? But that is already done if we can have enough organic matter in the soil. And if there's enough organic matter in the soil, the different living organisms, the roots, etc., already will make your soil very soft. You will see more about it. More will be spoken about it in the coming topics. More detailed discussions will be there. You will see that.
Thank you so much,
does that satisfy you?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, bro.
Any more questions from the participants? There are some questions in the chat box, Prabhu.
Yes, yeah. What are the questions? Oh yeah, there is one question about cows, how to take care of cows. Yeah, definitely there will be this session from Geeta Sahu. There will be, as you come, we have Dr. Sri Kumar, who's a veterinarian, and his wife, Dr. Shrikala, she's also a veterinarian. They'll give you plenty of help to actually take care of cows. How can we measure how much organic matter is there in my soil? Well, there is a measurement. I didn't get into that. There's a whole measurement into it. I can send you that in some other format, how to measure organic matter. But we can just, if you just even measure the amount of carbon in your soil, the double of that will be, double of that will be organic matter. So if you can measure the carbon in your soil, then we can know the. So how to increase organic matter in clay soil? Well, as we said, more and more residues, more and more, and sometimes even you have to grow something like we grow a crop for us to eat. We grow a rice or whatever. We also need to grow for the land. So we need to do this. That is why there is an important need to also buy cover crop and or green manure or grow green manure. Make sure all the residues that are there that we are growing, all the whatever we're growing, as much of residues need to come back to the soil. This is how we increase organic material in the soil without using without increasing. And if you're having to buy it, again, it is a problem because it's going to cost you. So if you can grow it on your land, it is the best. Another thing is to allow as much diversity to grow on your land, as many varieties as possible. And there are different ways. If your soil is highly deficient, probably even you can even use zero tillage to make things grow. Um, how to make organic soil from spoiled soil? Adding organic matter. This is, I think, a question by Maheshwari Sunita. Adding more organic matter in your soil. As you add more and more and reduce or stop completely using chemicals in your soil. And when you use chemicals, the plants cannot survive. So therefore, they are the other microorganisms cannot survive. So therefore, they're are taller trees better for photosynthesis capacity? Um, um, it's not just taller trees. In fact, not necessarily. It depends on how many varieties you have, how much leaf cover you have on your land. That increases the photosynthetic capacity of your land, and also different levels of it. Normally, trees are less photosynthetically active capacity-wise. Grasslands are better, but we're not saying that grasslands are always better than trees, because there are different areas where trees are also better because they also hold a lot of carbon and have more stable carbon in zones of trees. Okay, so is it? Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah, one question is from Ashwin Rajput Tiwari.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, Prabhu. Question is more around, I think, very insightful talk, very thought-provoking, right? Talk kind of fundamentally questions the way we are doing today, the farming practice, right? And some of the concepts that you spoke about, right, in terms of no tilling and increasing organic matter, there seems to be other concepts on similar lines, like regenerative farming being promoted by John Kempf and some of the other American scientists as well. So is this very different from that, or is it on similar lines? I just wanted to get some perspective on that.
The difference that you will see as you go ahead with this seminar is the use of cows. How cows can be actually help you to increase the diversity that you need and reduce your cost. At the same time, increase your organic matter in your soil, the health of your soil, the diversity in your soil, and reduce your cost also. So this is one special thing that you will see, that how cows and land are actually deeply interconnected. Every activity of the soil is actually connected with the cows. And in fact, with all ruminants will do that. But the advantage is that we are able to handle cows. Cows are handleable by humans much better, and their weight and their effect on the soil is much more different. It's more appropriate than if you have other smaller ruminants, or even if you have a buffalo. Buffaloes are also good, but the problem is that buffaloes are not as friendly with humans. They still have their what do you call them? Their streak of wild behavior, whereas cows are very good, in fact, to handle. They are very humanly connected. So what we are trying to explain to you through this whole seminar is how cows will actually help you to do this and even reduce your costs and reduce your problems that you have in dealing with when you're trying to regenerate your soil. We can do it with machinery, but that's going to come at a cost. Whereas this is not coming at a cost, and it is a part of our culture to do it. And we have culturally adapted to the system, and it is a tradition that helps us. And there's a lot of, it is not a lost science, it's already a science which is available, and which used to be practiced before, but we have just of some time we've forgotten about it. I don't know, does it help you a little bit?
No, it does actually.
Yeah.
Just one quick question was like, from your experience, how long does it take for a traditional soil to be regenerated, or with this mechanism? Does it take like a couple of years, or does it take more time than that to get back to the normalcy or with organic matter that you want it to have?
If you're asking me, it's the how much you can actually put into it. If you're telling me how we do it with cows, is how much, what do you call it? We have what we call it as a stocking rate. How much impact you can give on the soil with cows and animals and the organic matter. So it depends on how much you are able to do on it. It all depends on the amount of water that is available for you, naturally available for you, the kind of soil that you have, um, the kind of tools that you're going to use to do so. So all of this is important. So if you're able to, like, you are doing only once a year, you're only going to do it with the available thing, then it's going to take you a long time. If you're able to do it, repeat the whole thing, getting back organic matter into your soil, growing it, and again putting it back, growing it, that is where the cows come in. That is where your utilization of water, moisture, etc. come in. So this is how we will actually change the speed of it. Okay, does it? I mean, more will be actually be explained as you get into the seminar. More is, yeah.
Thank you very much.
There is one question by
Next,
Sada Yogi.
yeah.
Growing trees may give us
Okay.
organic material, but increased shade, I think, which obstructs sun for photosynthesis. Do we need to plant trees? Which trees need to plant? Which plants are harmful? Trees are definitely good. There are different ways of doing it. You can even prune your trees to increase the photosynthetic, to increase the organic matter in your soil. 50%, sorry, 20 to 30% cover on any soil is good, because it prevents the hot sun from hitting your soil, so which is good. It depends on how you do it, but 20 to 30% shade on any land is good, and for that trees are extremely good. It also helps to bring in a deeper nutrients from deeper parts of the soil, which normally or other plants cannot bring because of its shallow root system, and its leaves on whatever it sheds, etc., will also bring in that. Trees also provide a very good area for birds to come in, and as birds come in, they also help to fertilize your land. It also takes care of your pests. It increases the diversity of your land. It increases the ability. You don't need to spend money on parasite control. So trees are definitely should be a part of any growing environment. I hope it helps you, Sadayogi Prabhu. Parul Das, how is manure from cows different from other animals? There is a lot of difference from manure from cows and other animals. Cow dung is definitely has more beneficial and for adding to the microbial growth that is required for decomposition of matter, and healthy and helpful microbes are there in the dung of cows, which is not there in the dung of other animals. A lot of other animals have it, but cow is definitely very good because it helps. And the number of microorganisms in a healthy cow, in the gut of a healthy cow, helps to break down decomposed materials. So it is a very good inoculant to the to the microorganism, to the nutrient cycle that is there. Okay.
Okay, the one more hand
Yes.
actually I've seen.
Yes.
Geeta Mataji. Oh, she lowered her hand. Geeta Mataji, you would like to ask any question?
I have already written in chat box. Shall I say it now?
Yeah.
Yes, you can ask.
I want to know how to develop a good, loving bond with cow, and is it
Okay.
possible to make hostile cow turn friendly?
Oh, yes, we had that experience. More will be done discussed when Dr. Sri Kumar comes in. Well, my experience is that if the cow is maybe not treated well, she's been tied for a long time, she's not been given enough care, and hasn't got enough nutrition. Also, its movement is restricted. She normally behaves in this manner in a very hostile way. We had cows which had come in from such a background in our Goshala. Gradually, as we kept them open, we cut off their nose. There was a nose string in her nose, and she was afraid of that, anyone catching it. So we cut that off and we left her on. After some time, and we left her alone. She could eat and move around freely. As the years, as the months went by, gradually she became very healthy and would come to us, meet us actually when we came. So you need to actually deal with it. More will be dealt with Dr. Shikumar and Dr. Shikala. They are veterinarians and they will explain more. But yes, you can turn a hostile cow, to become friendly by the way you treat it. It has probably had a bad experience in its past, probably been deprived of proper nutrition, probably deprived of motherly care, and probably been tied up a lot or ill-treated, and because of which it has become hostile. Okay, so by changing it, things will change. There's one.
Thank you so much.
We have other practices such as permaculture. Could you please understand? Could you understand how these practices differ from cow-based farming? These are definitely permaculture, etc. They are definitely permanent agriculture. Definitely, these are things that we need to incorporate. But what you will see here is what the world has not understood is how central cows were to our life in India, especially, and in the Vedic culture, and how this culture was able to survive for thousands and thousands of years without, and civilizations were maintained for such a long time because of having cows as a center of their culture. And this, I will just give one verse the Vedas. Ahara shuddho sattva suddhe. Sattva suddhe dhruva smritihi says, if your ahara is shuddha, then your existence becomes pure. If your existence is pure, then what happens is that your memory becomes very sharp. Ahara shuddho sattva suddhe dhruva smritihi. Your memory, your ability, or your mental abilities become very, very strong, very. And when you have good mental abilities, then you know how to deal with the problems of life properly, including the problem of living in this world and having to die in this world, living in a dying world. So this connectivity that is there is central to our culture and the culture of the Vedic culture, where cows had a very central role to play. And as this role of the cow has been removed, whatever the cow was providing for us naturally, we are having to bring it by making factories and making different kinds of manufacturing processes, etc. So a cow, just by walking on the land, is able to break the crust of the land, help the rain to infiltrate. By its, even by the saliva that falls from the mouth of a cow, you're inoculating the land with helpful microbes. The urine of the cow increases the fungal, the capacity for the soil to actually have more fungal attack. So like this, there are different forms of connectivity like this, which you will see in this probably, which you may not be seeing in something like permaculture and things like that. So this is an added thing. We're not saying permaculture is bad by any chance, but this is an added thing that you will see. Okay, so this is to Ravi Teja. Yeah, I think we will end here for now. I think we are running out of time. Is that okay, Vasudevan Prabhu?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I hope you
So
stay tuned tomorrow and continue.
yes, thank you very much, Madha Prabhu, and
Hare
we
Krishna.
thank all of you for attending the today's course. And we'll meet again tomorrow with a new topic, that is function of farmers. So today we will post the one Google form in the group. It will have 2 or 3 questions in related to the today's course. So we request all the participants to kindly participate in the questionnaire. Okay. So we'll end this session for today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.